Welcome to the Small Church Podcast, the podcast for church leaders who want to make a difference in their communities. We're your hosts, Tony Marr and Bruce Montgomery, and we're excited to be with you today. On this podcast, we'll be discussing the latest trends, strategies, and ideas for effective leadership in small-sized churches. So whether you're a pastor, a ministry leader, or a volunteer, this podcast is for you. Each week, we'll bring you interviews with experienced church leaders who have valuable insights to share. We'll also explore topics like team building, community outreach, spiritual growth, and much more. So if you're looking for practical advice and inspiration to help you lead your church with excellence, you've come to the right place. The Small Church Podcast is brought to you by Higher Ministries. Higher Ministries is an organization that exists to help Christian leaders in the churches they serve through coaching and consulting, all for little or no cost. For more information on Higher Ministries or to find out more about the Small Church Podcast, please visit higherministries.com. Thanks for tuning into this week's edition of the Small Church Podcast.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Robert. Super glad to have you all with us today on the Small Church Podcast. Here with Tony and Bruce. What's up, guys?
Glad to be here with you. And great job with the intro there. We said right before we hit record, Robert, why don't you do our welcome and intro today? And you said, okay.
It's hard to say hello.
It is kind of hard to say hello.
It's opposite of boys to men. So hard to say goodbye. Sometimes it's just hard to say hello.
Yeah. Boys to Men was in concert here in our area just a couple weeks ago. Can you believe that? They're still touring around.
There's only 3 of them now, though.
I know.
They're only like 3/4 as good as they used to be.
That's true. That's true. They lost the bass guy, right?
I
think so. Yeah. Bruce, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Just trying to just keep up with things right now. Carol's not feeling good this morning, so I was helping her get ready and move around, and she was resisting help. Like I do. And I said, can I help you? No. And are you dying? Yes, but no. I'll do it on myself. I've enjoyed the time getting to know Robert, and we've had a couple times together now, and he's fun.
He's a lot of fun. He's a good guy. Other than the fact that he has horrible taste in sports teams, he's a good guy.
Root for the Dodgers?
He does not root for the Dodgers. No.
So, Bruce, Tony was at my church a couple weeks ago, and I was speaking, and I didn't even say this in the first service because I just didn't think of it, but I saw Tony, and I was just talking around this aspect of like we struggle with people sometimes and how much we struggle with them, and Tony literally texted me. We'd spent some time together one morning, and it was like 6 or 7 hours later, and he's like, I'm just going to be honest. I'm not sure. My heart, I'm still struggling with the fact that you're a Celtics fan because he's a Lakers fan. Like 7 hours later, he had spent the whole day like just going, I don't know if I can still hang out with Robert because he likes the Celtics and I'm a Lakers fan. And so I actually said that in church that sometimes you meet people that they're just going, man, I don't even know if I can hang out with you because
it's tough. I mean, it's really tough. I have to pray before every time I'm going to see you.
You never want to get the wrong brand.
Well, it's like two weeks ago, of course, Bama lost to Texas. And I got up and I go, this is a beautiful day. And they're going like, I'm like, you got to be thinking, Robert, it's raining outside. I mean, like, it's kind of cold. Why is it a beautiful day? I was like, I do not have to worry the rest of the season. I have no concerns. I have no worries. If we win, we win. If we don't, who cares? And then Tennessee got beat the next week. So that was awesome as well. And so now not only do I not have to worry, I don't have to listen to an undefeated UT living in Northeast Tennessee, kind of right next to Knoxville for the rest of the season.
You know who is still undefeated, though?
Ohio State.
The USC Trojans are still undefeated.
They'll play an actual college team here soon, not a high school squad.
Hey, look at the top 25 rankings. You've got more Pac-12 or Pac-3 teams left in the top 25.
Yeah, you've only got 3 teams in the whole conference. The SEC has like 14. So...
yeah, USC has a brutal schedule coming up.
Do they play Colorado?
We play Colorado in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Well, That's going to be an interesting game. I know that's not why we're here, but
it's good to talk about.
This may inspire the other podcasts that we've been talking about. We may just need to start doing it and having that conversation about everything in the world.
Yeah. So today we're talking about something a little bit different. This past. In the last recent weeks, my home was kind of turned upside down a little bit as my 17-year-old daughter was driving on her way to visit my mom, to visit her grandmother, and she was hit head on by a drunk driver and kind of threw our world into a tailspin for a while. It's one of those phone calls that I think as a parent you always fear and hope you never get. And receiving that call about 6 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, just sitting watching football with my son, and she calls and I answer the phone and she says, "Dad," I was in a panicked voice, I was just in a really terrible car accident. And she said, I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Well, I can't move my legs." And long story short, she ended up having to have surgery to put 4 screws and a metal plate in her leg and her ankle that will be a part of her for the rest of her life. And she will never be able to walk through a metal detector at a sporting event or at the airport without getting pulled aside. But she's doing relatively well, doing good. She's feeling good. We go back to the doctor tomorrow. But in that process, we were in the hospital for 5 days, and she had to have surgery on her leg. And the outpouring of care and concern and support from friends and from people that you love, it was very, very much appreciated, but yet also felt, I don't know, almost like a burden. And so I was thinking on this idea that why do pastors and caregivers struggle to receive care themselves? We spend our lives caring for other people. And I was actually sitting in the waiting room, the surgery waiting room, while my daughter was under the knife. And a very, very good friend of mine, a pastor who's been close to me for many, many years, came in to come and sit and just be with us while she was in surgery. And it was nice. It meant a lot that he was there. Really meant a lot to me that he was there, but I didn't want him there. And it was one of those things where I just wanted my focus and my attention to be on my daughter. And I appreciated the fact that he was there, but I didn't want him there. Bruce, you're supposed to mute your cell phone before we start recording.
I usually leave it on mute, and I forgot. So sorry about that. I didn't. It's a robocall. Okay. Now, want to start show again?
No, we're good. We're good. We'll just keep it on going. Okay. And so I was thinking through, why is that the case? Why do we have such difficulty receiving care when we're used to giving care for other people? And I thought of the hundreds of people that I've sat in a hospital room with them, or I've sat in their living room in trying times, difficult times. And did they feel the way that I felt? Did they feel like, all right, this is great, appreciate it, now leave? And so I just thought that would be a good discussion for us to have today. Why do pastors struggle to receive pastoral care themselves? Why do caregivers struggle to receive care themselves?
Well, I think for me, I just felt like it's easy for me to care for somebody else and not have pity. I had surgery once in the first church I was there, and so many people came to see me. I just told Carol, turn the lights out, close the door. And she did, and I was happier.
Treated it like Halloween. If you don't want to get candy out, just close the door, turn the lights
there.
off.
Yeah. But
So, Robert, you said before we started recording, we were kind of talking through this episode, and you said, I think you may be the only one who's like that. And apparently now I'm not. Bruce just sided with me. And I think of our society now, especially pastoral care ministry, that it used to be in churches, and for most of our listeners are small church pastors or small church leaders, and in most small churches you still have the prayer list that goes out. But even in some of the work that I've done in small churches, you find out well after the fact that someone was in the hospital, or someone had a surgery, or someone was going through a difficult circumstance. It used to be that when you were having a personal crisis, when you were having a personal issue, one of the first calls you made was to your church, was to your pastor. And I don't know that that's the case for a lot of people anymore.
No, absolutely not. And I think my exact words were, "Yes, you are the oddity." I called it. So you're.
I think
you're
you
the
said
odd
I'm weird. I think you said I'm strange.
If I didn't say weird, I should have. But the thing is, I mean, around this table, I mean, you talk with Bruce and I both multiple times a week, and so like we chat a ton. And if Amanda hadn't texted me that night about Kenna, like I might not have known until Wednesday or Thursday, just
Yeah.
because the rhythm of life, things get busy. We're both kind of doing our own things, and then we circle up. And then I would have shot you a text message Tuesday night going, "Hey, what about," which I think I did anyway, like, "Hey, what about the podcast?" And you're going, "Oh, by the way," and and so sometimes like you said, it's hard. I mean, because things happen and you just kind of find out, as in the rhythm of life. We've all had moments and situations where people we care about greatly found out about something at a really, really poor time, and it's strained relationships. People felt uncared for, they felt unimportant because they kind of hit that moment in that space. But I think it's a little bit like Bruce was, you were talking about, Bruce is on, kind of like you there. It's a little bit a minute ago, though, kind of, I don't think it was even, if it was intentional, you are one of the greatest, like, connector of stories ever. But you were talking about Carol, and you said she's not feeling well. And you're like, she doesn't want help. She's like, leave me alone. Yes, I'm dying, but no, I'm not. I don't want that. And I think sometimes, and I was laughing and I was thinking in my head, I'm going, as men, typically we're seen as whiny, like, take care of me, love me. Why don't you love me enough? And like Melissa is a lot like that. I mean, when she doesn't feel well, or if she's, her back's hurting her, something's going on, she's just like, I'm fine, leave me alone. Like, hey, can I help you with this? Can we do this? Can I go here? Can I schedule an appointment? She's like, no, I'm fine. And I wonder sometimes if it's like, if you would just act like me when you're sick, I wouldn't have to, it wouldn't be so much strain. And so, but there is that whole bump and balance of sitting in that space of pastors struggling because the calls come and it's always, always there. I struggle walking into those meetings sometimes. I feel like every time I go in, I'm like, how you doing? And it's like, how do you think I'm doing? And so it's a hard space to be in. It's a hard place to have a conversation around. And I just think it's something that more and more and more, as people aren't as connected to the church body as they used to be, they just don't have that community to do. And I will say this in my church, in my church, we function really through connect groups, our small groups that we have. And so I get texts all the time from connect group leaders that, hey, just wanted to let you know, so-and-so's in the hospital. So-and-so's mom had this happen. They live in Michigan or they live here. They don't live around here, blah, 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 blah. And they give all this information, and I love it. And I'm able to pray. And then I'm able to kind of, sometimes it's not something I need to address. Sometimes I just need to stay out of it. But sometimes it's something like, hey, I need to step in. And I'm able to kind of be there, but we function through small groups. So a lot of times I don't know things in a small church, 110, 115 people. And because our small group leaders are really caring for their people, our deacons are really caring for their people, and I just don't know. So that does change that entrance point as well.
One of the questions that I ask guys that I work with a lot, and really when we started Higher Ministries, the whole thing, and for a long time when people asked me what I did, I said I'm a pastor to pastors. But one of the questions that I ask guys a lot is, who's your 4 a.m. friend? Who's that person that if something goes wrong in life at 4 a.m., if you're driving down the highway on the way back from a trip and you're 45 minutes away from home and your car breaks down at 4 a.m., who's that person that you could call, that you would feel comfortable calling at 4 a.m. to say, hey, can you come help me out? And most of the time, guys answer AAA.
So funny. I was about to say that same thing.
But who is that person that when something goes wrong in life that you immediately feel this is someone that I want to reach out to? This is someone that I need help from, that I welcome care from. And I think for a lot of people, I don't know that we have an answer to that question.
I don't know it either. I know that I feel compelled to act in those kind of situations. And when my youngest brother died, we couldn't get there before he died, and my middle brother was really upset with me because we didn't get there. And I said I prayed for him. I know what's going on, but I have two families. I have my family with you and the kids and those things, but I also have family at church, and the family at church. That's I will go there quicker than I'll go to our family for some reasons, but I don't always have somebody come in to me and say, "How are you doing?" I'll just kind of blow it off and say, "Oh, I'm doing great," and go on. But I don't know why I'm like that way. That I guess I just don't like the attention. Well, I like attention, but not that attention.
Yeah.
And because I don't know, when my dad died, people kept coming up to me and saying, "How you doing?" And my standard reply was, "I don't know. I've never been down this road before. I don't know how I'm doing, and I haven't figured it out yet." And so it was hard for me to answer that question. I didn't look for that question for anybody. In fact, if I saw somebody coming at me, I'd turn around and go the other way. And I think that's just because I'm supposed to have answers, and I didn't have answers. I was in pain, and you were in pain, and the answers really weren't coming as quickly as maybe you wanted them to. They didn't come as quickly as I wanted them to, so I could actually give a person a realistic assessment of where I was, because I didn't know.
And I wonder if that's part of the problem, is that we're so used to having the answers for everyone else that then when we don't have the answers for ourselves, it makes us uncomfortable.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this other night sitting and praying with somebody, and they're just struggling with, they want to have kids and just struggling in fertility and things like that. And they went through a miscarriage like a year or so ago, and they're like, "Man, God, why is round two not coming?" And it was so easy to sit and pray with them, to walk through Scripture in that prayer, and to talk about, Romans 8, the Holy Spirit's interceding when all we can do is groan and mumble. I mean, it's just so easy to say those things, and sometimes I think on some level, we're already like leaning into those things. We're already leaning into the fact of, God, you've told us to come boldly before you. And so we're praying that in this situation, in the loss, I lost my dad about 3 years ago, and a little over 3 years ago. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, people are like, "How you doing?" I'm going, I mean, I don't know how to answer that, because, Mom's by herself now, and this is this situation here, and this is this, and they've been married 50 years. So I don't know. We've never navigated this. I'm personally okay, but I don't know what that's going to be. But I think we've sat in that space where we're trying to lean in, and I think we do more times than not. We have the anger. We go through the phases, and so we've got the frustration, and we kind of shout that out at God, and He's okay. He can take that. He's got broad shoulders, and He, and then He comforts us, and we move through, and we start to kind of think through those passages we share with people and those prayers that we've prayed with people, and it sits us into a place where maybe at that point we're going, okay, I exhale, deep breath, here we go, and I can now abide in this moment. I can abide in this space, and I can rest in the fact of, God, you're in control, and regardless of whether, my kid can't walk through a metal detector the rest of the life, or we're never going to get our fathers back, or, we have to replace a car, or this has happened or that's happened. You're faithful, you're good, and we're going to get through this. And then people start coming in and wanting to insert all of that. It gets hard.
Yeah, it does. It really does get hard. I can remember when, this was several years ago, that I was the lead pastor of a fairly large church that was growing really quickly, really fast moving, to where I was at the place where my role as the lead pastor of that church was pretty much a CEO. I didn't spend a lot of time with people outside of my staff. I was working with my staff and working with the leadership on vision casting, strategic planning, executing plans, thinking futuristically, and not spending a lot of time with people. And I found myself quickly burning out. Then we had a guy in our church who was very plugged in to our church that had a heart attack while he was out for a run. And I spent hours and hours. He was a friend of mine. He was someone that I was close to in our church. One of the few guys that I was actually had a personal relationship with. And so I spent a lot of time at the hospital with him and with his family. He ended up passing away. And I did his funeral did his funeral and left the funeral and got into my car to drive on vacation with my kids. And so literally left from the church parking lot to go and drive 8 hours on vacation. And I got into the car, and driving away, I made it about 45 minutes outside of town, and I just broke down. I just completely broke down. And over the course of that week, being away from the church, being away from all of my responsibilities and duties and obligations there, I can remember thinking this last week and a half is the most enjoyment that I've had in ministry in 3 years. And it's because I was with people. It's because I got to actually do what my original call was, and that's to love and care for people and lead people, show people the love of Christ. And for years, I had been running a business. And in that moment, those times in the hospital with the family, in guiding them through a very, very difficult time, it felt more like real ministry to me than anything I'd done. It was one of the catalysts, that moment, for me saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to get back to caring for people. I want to get back to loving people. I want to get back to walking through life with people. And yet, when I go through those moments myself, I would rather walk alone. Minus a few very, very close people that you have. And Bruce, I come back to this a lot, to a book that you recommended to me many, many years ago. It's probably obsolete now.
Am I that old?
You are, I am as well. That talks about the title, the name of the book is Bowling Alone. And it just talks about this idea that society has gone to where we don't crave community anymore. We don't crave people. We don't have that innate desire for relationships with people anymore. And I think that we've got some people like Robert who absolutely love that. But for me, I feel like for so long in pastoral ministry, you have to be on. You have to play a role. You have to, when you're around people, you have to be on. And so when I'm trying to be in this moment with myself and my family, when my dad passed away very unexpectedly about 3 years ago, same as yours, and the outpouring of support and care, and I didn't want to have to put on a face for you to say that I'm okay. I just wanted to be alone in my grief and be able to feel the things that I wanted to feel without having to feel like, okay, now I have to put on my ministry leader role. I have to put on that mask or that cape for the moment that you're here. I just want to be me and dwell in the feelings and emotions that I'm feeling and not have to worry about you. And I think that maybe that's a me problem that I need to work out with my counselor, that why do I feel the need that when Jason walks into the room, that now, no matter what's going on with my life, now I have to flip the switch from being Tony the human to Tony the pastor.
And not Tony the tiger. Now, I think that, like, there's so much there. One, I think of this, like, Stone Cold Steve Austin, DTA thing, don't trust anybody. Like, I think sometimes we feel like as pastors that, like, if we tell somebody something, like, we'll be genuine on stage, but if we tell them in person something that's private and intimate, they feel like they have some track, and we feel like it'll get exposed and leaked and things along those lines. But I think that the hard thing is, and there's so many, you had like so much there, but I think that the hard thing comes down to a lot of times is like, we're so busy caring for others, we don't care for ourselves. And that whole idea of, love God, the heart, soul, mind, and strength, love your neighbor as yourself. There's a level of understanding how to care for ourselves. And we just have to have the freedom and understand that we have the right to look at people and go, hey, thank you for checking in. I'm not great in this instant. I just faced something really hard, and I need a minute. So, put me in your calendar for a week. Shoot me a text in a week. We'll try and grab a coffee. We'll try and get together then. But I need 5 days. I need 2 days. I need some time to get alone, to sit in this for a minute. And that's not being mean. That's just understanding that we can't, there's moments that we need to retreat and get away and sit in the healing that we need, whether that's counseling or whether that's quiet, whether that's really close family or whether it's just alone. That's just where we need to be.
Yeah. And I think this podcast episode is revealing to the rest of the world, which you guys already knew, that I'm a very, very messed up person, is I'm very wishy-washy, even with my wife, that there are times when I'm going through a really difficult situation, my daughter's accident or the loss of my dad, where there are times when I just need you around. Even if we're not saying anything, I just need your presence. I don't want to be alone. In fact, maybe I would prefer not to say anything. Let's just sit, and I need your presence. And then there's other times, and it could flip on like flipping a switch that, okay, now I just want to be alone. I don't even want you around. I just want to be alone. We had for me, my retreat is always Dodger baseball. And it doesn't matter how rough of a day I've had, how hard of a day I've had. At 10:10 p.m., I can open up the MLB app and start streaming the Dodger game. And for most of my life, it was Vin Scully. Now it's Joe Davis and Oral Hershiser. They're that comforting family to me, which is so strange. It's so strange, but it's peace. It's an escape from everything going on in the world to have that. And sometimes I will tell my wife, Amanda, I'll say, will you just sit in here with me? Just be here. Bring your computer. Leave the office. And other times I'm like, no, I just want to sit here alone and just watch baseball. And I don't know, again, John, my therapist, I will be calling you this afternoon to kind of unpack some of this. But I don't know why that is, that sometimes you want to be surrounded and sometimes just want to be alone.
That's a lot, Bruce. You're going to need to unpack that. You're going to need to help there.
What's that?
I said, that's a lot. You're going to have to unpack
I left you
that.
guys speechless. You're like, yeah, we need to get your therapist in here. So we'll put in a call and see if we can get him on the line. But I think that it's important that, I talk about Dodger baseball, and that's my thing. Working out is my thing. Going for a run is very, very therapeutic for me. And so I do think that it's critical that we have these things that allow us to sort of disengage from reality and just focus on us, whatever that is. Maybe that's pottery. Maybe that's playing music. Maybe that's just sitting and listening to music. Maybe that's going for a drive. That I think it's critical that we all have something that is ours, that is that escape from reality that we can have, that we can go to. That's why for me, I'm told Amanda yesterday that we have 14 games left and then the playoffs, and it's a death for me when baseball season ends because Joe Davis and Oral Hershiser won't be there for me for a few months. Now, the good news is that Joe Davis has become one of the top football broadcasters, and so I can just flip over and listen to him calling college and NFL football, and that voice brings me right back home. But Bruce, what's that thing for you that you have that's an escape for you?
I'll generally go for a long, long walk alone. It was good when I had a dog because it gave me a reason to get out of the house. And one year around Christmas time, I was just down. I was kind of in that that crisis of almost being afraid of everything. And Klaus and I had a lot of long, long talks and walks. And Klaus doesn't give me any feedback, and I didn't want it. He's our little dachshund. And I just wanted to talk to him and hear what I was thinking. Rather than just having it inside my head, I wanted to get it out. And when Dad died, when things like crises like that have happened, I think part of it is I think I'm expected to have the answer. And as a preacher, I'm expected to have an answer, and I don't. I don't have a clue sometimes. So, why that happened to McKenna, or why this happened to so and so. I'll give me time to think about it, and I may be able to give you an articulate answer. But I'm not ready to do that right at first. And if it's me that is the problem and having the issue, I don't want to talk about it at all. For a while, maybe never. I just will say, like I said, I don't know where I'm going. Never been here before. I think I'm doing okay, and that was my answer. And that was to put people off. I didn't really want to. I didn't really know where I was going. I'm just in the bowling alone thing that I gave you. I love that book. When I saw the title, because I was a bowler. It's not fun to bowl alone, and I could just see that mental picture in my life. I think probably I would go bowling alone, do some sports thing that I could do alone, and hit a racquetball against the wall hard and harder and harder. But I didn't really want to talk about it until I got through all of that, and I think it is because I think people expected me to be strong, expected me to have an answer, and if I was strong, they wondered what's wrong with me because I was strong and I wasn't weeping when my dad died. I was kicking rocks at that time, so I think just by position, by calling, most of us in the ministry are caregivers at some level, and I think we don't want to let others down. I have to tell this about Carol. When we were
be very careful here, Bruce.
Yep, I am. She doesn't listen to the podcast. But we were in FCA for a while. I was a state director in Ohio for FCA, and she was around a whole lot of athletes for the first time in her life, and in meetings and things, and she would hear people, they would say, "Suck it up." If you're doing this, suck it up. And that's what I tried to do for me, suck it up. And one day I was feeling sorry for myself, and Carol walked in the room. She said, "Lick it up." And I said, "That's a little too visual for me." But she was trying to get "suck it up" out there, and it was "lick it up." And I was thinking, "Oh, that vomit down on the floor, that'd be a horrible thing." But I think that, in athletics, there's that term. And one athlete to another will just simply say, "Suck it up." And that means, toughen up. I've been there before. Just go and get over it. And I think in church, maybe we don't think our people are tough enough or have enough insight to work their way through it. I'm always willing to be there for somebody, but like you said, I don't really want anybody around when I'm going through it. Once I figured it out, then I can talk about it. And once I can. One of the communication things that I teach in interpersonal, nothing exists unless I can name it. That makes sense to you? If I can't talk about it, then it really doesn't exist for me. Until I can put it into words allow us to have meaning, I can express myself, then I'm ready to have somebody around. But if I'm mixed up myself, I don't want anybody to know how messed up I am. I would rather have those long walks with Klaus. Even in the middle of the night, midnight, I'm walking our neighborhood thinking somebody's going to arrest me for something, so I took the dog along. But
Bruce, I can get you a dog.
I know. I wouldn't mind it if I didn't have just a one-floor house with a very small yard.
Doesn't need a lot of room. Very big dog, very little room.
Yeah. I would be really tempted. I really would be tempted.
I'm considering that. I am accepting your offer to take my dog.
But you have not been to my new house yet, have you?
I haven't.
Okay,
no.
good. Keep it that way.
You're talking about that suck it up thing. Inside of the church world, I've kind of, you hear people kind of, pull it up by your bootstraps. That bootstrap theology is really how people, it's how I grew up. It's just like, hey, if you're sad and you don't want to be sad anymore, just be happy. Like, suck it up, pull it up, pull it up by your bootstraps. Let's get to work. Let's just get it done. And I just think it's so unhealthy. Mm-hmm. It's so unhealthy to live in that mind space and that head space. And I understand that the people listening to this are probably more than likely somebody like me that maybe they're a lot younger than me and they're leading a small church, or maybe they're older than me and leading a small church, and you're struggling in that space. And I'll just tell you, find somebody. I mean, I don't normally do this, but I've been getting text messages from our worship pastor today, and he and I are just talking through some things during the podcast, and in that space, have somebody that you can serve with, that you can walk in, you can sit alongside, that values and cares about you, your mental health. And I know all these buzzwords, it's like saying social justice and things. These are biblical things
Yeah.
that we need
Yeah.
to find a way to talk about healthy, not politically. We need to talk about them biblically and walk through that. And inside of mental health, inside of self-care, inside of these things that we talk about and do as as Christ followers, and we bump up against, we can't just look at that as pastors and go, well, that's for everybody else, not for me.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking as Bruce was just talking, is that Bruce is a lot like me in the fact, and I think sometimes we wear that as a badge of honor that I don't need anybody. That's not healthy. It's not the way that we are intended to live. It's not the way that God created us. We were created for community. We were created to live life with other people, and so this feeling that I have where I don't want to let you in when I'm dealing with my trash, when I'm dealing with my garbage, I'd rather just process it alone. That's not healthy. That's not a proper way to live, and it takes its toll on you. So how do we break through those barriers? How do we overcome those barriers to receiving care?
I have to realize that I'm not Superman, that I'm not the person that I really project, and I can't handle everything, and I need to talk to people about it. Once I realize that, then I can talk to people about it and let them help me carry the burden. But when I'm at the first part with that burden, and I don't understand it, I don't like to look like a fool. I like to, and I don't like to look incompetent. I like to look like I know what I'm doing, and when I give you an answer, it's the right answer. It's not one I'm going to fish for. So I think that fear. I think part of the fear is looking weak in the eyes of others, and yet sometimes we're stronger when we're the weakest. When people can really help us.
That might be biblical.
It might be. That second Tony.
Yeah.
Third Bruce or something. But yeah, I think it's sharing our burden is biblical.
That joke fell so flat.
I know. But sharing a burden is biblical, but it's hard to do. And I've got to really trust you to share that burden with you. But before I'm going to share it, I'm really going to try to have some answer before I do that, so that when you ask me back, well, what am I doing about it? Well, here's what I'm doing about it. I'm working on it. I'm doing this, so it shows you, or shows the person I'm talking to, at least I have some competence or something. But I think that I guess sometimes as a minister, I think I'm God. I should have the answer, and I'm not God. I know I'm not God, but I think like that. I think like I can rescue you. And sometimes I can't. Sometimes all I can do is sit there and cry with you. And maybe that's the best thing.
Do you think, Bruce, there's a space, and I know I said earlier that we kind of mentally run through these things that we say to other people. Do you think there's this space, though, that we run through the checklist of here's what I would pray with somebody in this situation, or here's what I would say, but there's really that place where we have not come in that moment, in that instant, where Scripture tells us to cast our cares upon the Lord, to truly cast our cares upon the Lord because He cares for us. And we're sitting in this place and we say we believe, we say we're trusting Jesus, we say that we're wanting to see Him do something, and we do. But in that moment, we maybe just haven't fully cast that in. But I love what you're saying there. Hey, I'm not Superman. And me acknowledging that I'm a broken human just like everybody else on this planet, that God sacrificed for me the exact same way. He didn't make me a pastor so that he could give he only has so much grace to go around, and he could give a little grace to me and give more to somebody else. Because I'll just tell you, like, I probably need more than the vast majority of people who sit in a church with me on Sunday. And then that you kind of alluded to in a couple different ways, this idea of just being willing to accept the help. I mean, but like when we start to cast this on God and just say, okay, God, I'm letting it go. I'm really going to let it go, and I'm going to sit here and I'm going to rest in you. That then in that moment, it allows us to receive from people the care, the comfort, the kindness that they're just trying to show in that moment. I don't. You said so much good stuff there. I'm just wondering those couple of things as I was listening. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm sitting in a space where I feel like I've given it over, but I haven't handed it over and really kind of placed my burden up on God the Father and said, I trust you with this enough that I'm going to stop trying to fix it. I'm going to wait for you to speak. And I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but maybe that's something that's there as well.
Well, the first time I had a funeral, I had never had a funeral before, and it was a couple that I had just married about 2 months before, and she died of cancer.
Wow.
And I was thinking, what am I going to say to Denny? What words can I say? And realizing that words for him right now weren't going to mean anything. And so when I got to the funeral home, and after, because that's where we were going to meet up for things, when I got there, I just put my arms around him, hugged him, and we cried together. He knew I didn't have words. I didn't, and I knew he didn't have words, and we just, I'm so sorry sounds so simple, but just there's some really stupid things we say in situations like that. I try not to say many of those. Like God just need another tenor in the choir or something. That's not a real bright answer, but I don't, but in that situation, I had to send Carol and the kids up to her mom and dad's for the whole night, and I just sat that night home, looked at Scripture, and prayed, and tried to think it all through before I could even address them. And if it hadn't been for reassurance that they had that the cancer was gone, they wouldn't have gotten married. And because the pain of what was coming up was there, but they had hope. They had hope that she was going to have a long time. And now I've got to go give answers to that. And I didn't have answers. I just had hugs and tears. And I needed that time to just, I don't know what I was even thinking as I went through, but I just had to be alone.
And I think in our own personal crisis, we learn more about how to provide care for others. Because in those moments, Bruce, I know that when I'm sitting in those moments, I don't want anyone to say anything. Like I said, with Amanda and the times when other people have come around, I think about when we lost my dad. There's no words that you can say, and all of your words feel rehearsed. And so just your presence of being there means so much more than your words. And I can remember in going through those moments, thinking back on all the times that I'd sat in that space with other people and said, did I say the ridiculous things that these people are saying to me now, where just your presence means so much more than any of your words?
And the answer is probably yes. Maybe as we get older, we said those things less. But, when Dad passed away 3.5 years ago, COVID had just hit. Thankfully, it wasn't a COVID thing for Dad. But when he passed away, we were stuck at home. And so we were basically, for the first couple weeks, just driving to Mom's house, spending the entire day and helping her, being with her, being present, but helping with things and getting stuff taken care of. And then we got through those first couple of weeks, and we were still going to see Mom quite a bit. But we just had a lot of time because the world was shut down.
Yeah.
And you talk about presence and a dog. Melissa and I would just take our dog and just walks. And sometimes those walks, our normal route, the dog would kind of pull. And the dog was like the Holy Spirit for us almost. It would just, we have a 140-pound Alaskan Malamute, so where he wants to go, he typically goes regardless. But he would just kind of pull. He'd smell something, and we were just like, okay. And we would just walk, and we would just like sit and talk about so many things. And that's something Melissa had experienced. She lost her dad actually 6 months before we met, and so she had experienced that. She had lived through that, and her dad was her hero. So she was just able to speak so much into my life, into that moment, and that presence is a big deal. And you know, I tend to not try not to turn on sporting events because that's where I get my angst and anxiety sometimes. But when I'm sitting in a stressful moment, but like I would much rather if something like if it would have been one of my kids and you had shown up, I'd much rather you bring up the Dodgers and the Braves and let's just talk. And people can think that I'm kind of heartless in that moment. They can think that I don't care, but I couldn't. I mean, there's no way I could care more about what's going on in my life in that moment, or if I'm there for you, what's going on in your life. But last thing I can do is, hey, tell me again exactly what happened with the accident. Let's walk through every step of that. Tell me every detail you know. What were you doing when you got the call? Like, why would you want to repeat that? I mean, the Braves might have lost, but I would rather talk about that than I would, I'd rather talk about Alabama's poor quarterback play than I would sit and recap that entire thing. Let my mind drift into something that allows me to just be human for a minute
Yeah.
and then float back into being dad or
Exactly.
whatever it is down the road there.
I think you hit on it. We are human.
Mm.
Sometimes we think because we're in the ministry, we're supposed to have every answer. We're supposed to know exactly the right response, and we have to know what a person's thinking. And the reality is, we are just brothers in Christ and to other people, and we're in leadership capacity, but we're still just brothers, and we're family. And I've learned that over the years of the family, but family extends, to me. Right now, Tony is we're as close as brothers, and Tony it's Tony and I became friends your freshman year in college, and he was in my speech class. And I don't know if he was awake or not when I
Taught me everything I know, which probably makes you feel really depressed.
Well, I'm glad you remembered that book and things. I didn't think anybody remembered that book, but I thought it was a significant thing.
I think one of the issues that we have is that for a lot of our listeners out there, their issue is probably not that they don't want to receive care. It's that they don't have anyone. Statistics tell us, and this is one of the stats that we use a lot in our ministry, is that 80%, wrap your mind around that, Robert. I don't know that we've ever talked about this. 80% of pastors and ministers say that they have no close personal friends. Yeah. 0. 80%. And so I wonder if there are guys out there listening to this that are just saying, I don't have that person that I would call if something's going on. I don't. As soon as we were at the hospital on Sunday evening, Amanda kind of said, hey, I've been texting your friends and just telling them what's going on so they can be praying for McKenna and praying for you. She called she texted both of you or called both of you. She said, hey, I just want to let you know, you might start getting texts on your phone because I've been texting some of your friends. And there may be some people out there that are like, I don't know who I would text. I don't know who I would call in that moment because I don't feel like I have anybody. And that's a difficult place to be. And if you're in a small church, in a small community, you may look around and say, I don't even know where to begin with that. I guess I would say try to figure out how you can plug yourself in to a community group, to a club, to another pastor's group. I know those are becoming more and more scarce, these pastor meetup groups. But what's a way that you can connect? It's the reason why we started this ministry, was to be a minister to ministers, to be a safe place for you to vent, to just get everything off of your chest, and not worry about the repercussions of, is that going to come back around to me? Is that going to come back around to the ears of someone in my church or one of my elders or deacons? But I think what we've seen today is whether or not you you like that person in your life, you like that sense of community or care, it's critical to our health. It's critical to who we are, and it's the way that God intended us to be.
Yeah.
All right, well, that is about all the time that we have for today. If you are in that place and you find yourself that you just don't know who you would reach out to, I would say one of the first steps you can make is to reach out to Higher Ministries. You can find us at higherministries.com and get all of our contact info there. If you just simply want someone to talk to, someone to sit down and have a cup of coffee with, go and play disc golf with, we are here and we would love to have that conversation with you. Whatever you're doing, know that you don't have to face life alone. And so for Robert Kell and Bruce Montgomery, I am Tony Marr. We want to thank you for listening to this very heavy, very deep episode of the Small Church Podcast. And we hope that you will take some time to join us next week. Have a great rest of your week.